this series called Community Conversations. The reason why it's titled Community Conversations, it's because it's supposed to be a very candid conversation between people who are experienced in the community and people in the community themselves who are, mashallah, just as important actually. I consider community members even more important than the people who actually lead the community, because you guys are the reason why we're able to do, alhamdulillah, what we do. So this session, inshallah, will be kind of a series, a session one, I guess you could call it. And it's going to be about a topic that a lot of people actually have a lot of inquiries about, which is, how do we bridge that gap between young folks and people who are older? And myself as a youth director, Brother Malik here, who's a chaplain at the Midtown Mosque, and Imam Anwar here, who's the Imam at Masjid al-Rahman, all three of us on a daily, weekly schedule, we get this kind of question, how do we kind of bridge that understanding between our elders and our youngsters? Because there has to be something both folks can bring to the table. So inshallah, today we're just going to bring shed a little bit of light, a little bit of insight, inshallah. And we'll get the conversation rolling, and obviously conversation is the best way to kind of get anything going. So inshallah, without further ado, I'm going to hand off the microphone to Brother Malik here, who is heavily involved with the Midtown Mosque project, and mashallah, they're doing amazing things over there. So please, inshallah, give your warmest welcome to him.
Do I need?
Yeah.
I have to ask. Once you pass 3 kids, you question your need for a microphone. Man, especially if you can't put it on. Just try it on, man. Is that okay?
Yes.
Can you hear me? No? Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
All right, it's good to be here. Good to see everybody on a Friday. Good to see smiling faces. Good to see beautiful faces. So I just wanted to talk about, I like to define words before we start so that we all can have the same understanding of what we're talking about. The topic talked about the older people with experience and younger people with charisma, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I looked up the term experience. This is the old English teacher in me. Experience is defined by Webster as a particular instance of personally encountering or undergoing something. Meaning you've had a personal encounter or you've underwent some type of thing in life that gives you experience. Now, charisma, am I good?
No, you're okay. I think this
Oh, the
other
other
mic,
one's on?
I think it's,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
they're saying that one's on.
Can you turn it off? Okay. Now, charisma, which is what generally, I'm assuming that's what the young people have, is a personal magic of leadership arousing special popular loyalty or enthusiasm for a public figure. The synonyms for charisma are appeal, charm, and magnetism. So just to define what we're dealing with. So we're dealing with people who've been through something and people who have a magnetism or an appeal. Young people are beautiful. Their energy is beautiful. Their desire to change the world is beautiful. And Malcolm X said young people have something that older people don't have. They don't have a fear of failure. He said older people are so scared of failure they become cowards. So I just kind of want to talk about this bridge. I think this bridge isn't really a bridge. I think it's a lack of vision. So I want to the topic was talking about for broadening Islam in America. I want to talk about Islam in Memphis. What is the vision for Muslims in Memphis over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Where are we planning on going? I'm not going to take all my 15 minutes because I'm a conversationalist. I like to, kind of give and take. But have we come up with a vision for what Islam in Memphis will look like so a young person can grow into that their role in that? Or is it just kind of undefined? And right now, when I talk to young people, I think it's just undefined. Young people want to feel good. It's the age of feelings. We can like it or not like it, but it's still the age of feelings. It's about how things make me feel. How does religion make me feel? There are some problems to that, but there's some legitimacy to that as well. Doing good makes you feel good. Are we putting young people in a position to do good? That quenches that thirst for wanting to feel good? Or are we just telling them, like, we're talking? Are we just talking too much? Telling them how they should, respect your elders, this, that, and the other. Yeah, you respect your elders. Like, that's second to Tawheed. You should respect your elders. But have we taught them what that looks like? And as a convert, I can understand that. I grew up in the church. One thing I can say about the church, we were clearly taught what respect looked like. And it came with a hand. To be honest with you, if you didn't follow what that looked like. But what does respect look like? There's often, you can tell young people, you should respect your parents. What does that exactly look like, respect your parents? Does that mean obviously you lower your voice, you don't say anything back to them, but on a daily basis, what does respecting your parents look like in practice? I'll give you an example. So when I became Muslim, we were taught birthdays are haram, this, that, and the other, right? But then I was wondering, well, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do on those days? So, alhamdulillah, I had a beautiful mentor from China who said, look, my kids don't celebrate birthdays. What my kids do on their birthday is give me a gift. I'm their mother. I went through all the pain. And I said, that really makes a lot of sense. So when my oldest was young, very young, so we instituted that in our own house. The other day, my son, who's 10, comes to me and says, hey, what if I want to give my kids a gift? I said, well, son, what about your wife? He said, all right. But what if I still want to give them a gift? They could do something for their mother as well. The whole point of the practice was, and I talk because my parents aren't Muslim, so my parents are grandparents, right? They're gonna spoil the grandkids, and they're gonna give to the grandbabies. So my kids are like, hey, okay, this feels pretty good, right? The point of it is to teach them to respect their mom. For me, the whole point was you have to learn to respect your mother. I can tell you respect your parents, but there has to be some practicum in there that allows them to do that. What are we telling young people in Memphis that it means to be Muslim? What does that look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? Young people want to feel good, and elders want to know that everything's going to be okay when they leave. We're honest. That all the investment they've put in, that everything's going to be all right and everything's in good hands. I want to commend this young man, alhamdulillah, because it makes you feel like everything's going to be okay. When you can hand the tradition down to young people who love the tradition, who love the Prophet ﷺ, and who love serving people, then as an elder, you're like, okay, alhamdulillah. Things are in good hands. But if you haven't trained young people, and you don't know whose hands it's going to be in, then yeah, it does make you nervous. You get agitated. You start lashing out at young people, call them, these millennials are spoiled, this, that, and the other. No, you just haven't trained anybody. You haven't coached them up to take responsibility. That's not fair. It's quite selfish to me. It's easy to place blame on somebody else when we just haven't done our job. So the miscommunication, I went through the brochure and I said, what was miscommunication? Again, I don't know if it's miscommunication or we're just not communicating the values, what the mission is. Have we told them what the mission is? Are we inviting young people to sit with adults? I'll tell you something we do at Midtown once a month on Saturdays. It's called Soul Food Saturdays. So we have a topic, and we have young people, about 12, 13 and up, come sit. We're all 13 to probably 75 or something. We talk about an issue. Last month we watched a film, it's called Redneck Muslim. Mm-hmm. And we just chop it up. We talk about, okay, what do you think? What do you think? And we go around the room and we talk. It's about fellowship. It's about being with each other and hearing different perspectives. I mean, we've talked about marriage. So we've heard from young people what they think about marriage instead of dictating this is what marriage is. And they have challenges that we just didn't have. We don't have. We didn't have when we were younger. And we get to hear those challenges and we get to talk in a respectful way to each other. And that's why we call it soul food. It's food for the soul. Like it's conversation for the soul. And after that, we eat together. We just break bread with each other. For some people, we see them once a month. Some people, we see them every other month. Some people, we see them every third month. What they know is going on. So we can communicate the values with each other. And we can hear about the challenges and what we need to be working on as older people. I'm not an elder yet. Alhamdulillah. I passed you by, but I'm not an elder. So, is our messaging inclusive? Is it scary enough that makes young people excited? Young people like excitement. Is our mission and our values, are they scary enough to make you say, I don't know if we can do that? That's a big, hairy goal. Jim Collins says that in the book Good to Great, how institutions and organizations go from being good organizations to great organizations, that you have to have big, scary, hairy goals. But I also know we scare a big, scary Lord. So why not have big, audacious goals? If we believe Allah can answer big, scary ideas, if we believe the Prophet ﷺ came, one man in Mecca who's inspired all of us, I wouldn't know you for any other reason. I wouldn't know anybody from Bangladesh, Palestine, I wouldn't know you for any other reason. But a man in Mecca who was visited by an angel, his message carried all over the world. So why are our goals so small? We just want to build a couple buildings? And I say this as somebody who is an executive director of a masjid. Are we comfortable with that? We're in the second poorest city. Alhamdulillah, we moved from being the first poorest city. We're the second poorest city in the country, or city its size. Are we comfortable with just buildings? Or do we have some goal that young people can say, I'm committed to that for the rest of my life? That gives them meaning. Are we just cool with what we got? That's a question that I would like for us to discuss. Where are we going? And do we have skin in the game? I just read this beautiful book called Skin in the Game. Do we have skin in the game with each other? Do I really believe my kid's future is intertwined with your kid's future? He's not here, but Brother Darbo, alhamdulillah, we need to get this man a community award. My daughter's future is intertwined with his daughter's future. If they don't succeed, my kids don't succeed. Do we look at each other's kids like that? Are we that invested in each other's kids? That's skin in the game. That your kids can't fail, or my kids will be hurt. Are we just cool with the whole nuclear family thing? As long as my family's good, I don't really know what's going to happen to yours. Then do we have a community? Common unity, common values, common ideas that bind us together. So, in closing, hopefully that didn't take 15 minutes. In closing, sometimes in communities, we don't really show young people value because the only people who get like love in the Muslim community is a scholar. Most of our kids aren't going to be scholars. They're just not. Sometimes the only people we value are the people of scholarship or the people who can donate a lot of money, which thus they're going into certain fields. What about all the people in the middle? What about all the kids that are going to be in the middle? Do they not have value? We need cultural creators right now. We need people who can create culture. Because the majority of our lives aren't spent in the masjid. The majority of our life is not spent here. It's not. We should dedicate some time to it, but it's not spent here. We're engaging with the society. Our kids are engaging with the society. We need people who can create moral, healthy culture. And we need to value those people. or they'll feel like there's no place for me. And eventually, what I often see with young people, once you graduate high school, you've aged out of the community. And you've graduated from the community as well. Alhamdulillah, they'll come when they're younger. Once they hit 18 and they're headed to college, alhamdulillah, I've aged out, I've graduated from that Muslim stuff. You know, alhamdulillah, I'm good. I'll share two stories as I'll end. Something Ustad Ashir and Imam Hamza told me when they were growing up in New Haven, in Imam Zayd's community, that they literally felt like Quran was for kids. Because only kids studied Quran and adults didn't. And it really struck me because I was like, man, maybe you're talking to me. You know, yeah, I pushed my kids on that. Are we only planning for kids under 10? Make sure they learn Quran, make sure they do their studies, and then after that, is the plan over? That's my concern. You know, I've kids who are post 18. Like, what are they growing into? What is their role going to be? So that, and I'll share another program we do at Midtown on Sundays. It's called Tea and Tafsir. So if you're a tea lover, come have some tea with us. You got some cookies as well. What are they called? Oh, okay. Biscuits. Yeah, crumpets. That's what he said. Tea and crumpets together. We have all kind of teas. We have green tea. We have black tea. We have all kinds of tea. And we drink tea and we read Quran in English and in Arabic, and we learn tafsir. And we have kids as young as, who's the youngest kid? 8? About 8 years old to, again, people about 60, 70 years old. And we learn together, and we hear, what do you take from this ayah? What does this surah mean to you as a young person? And what does this mean to you somebody who's had 20, 30 years of experience? We have to share space and time with each other as people of multi-generational, and you know, we've lived and grew up in different decades. America isn't the same America I grew up in, and I'm not that old. It's just not the same place. But we want to learn about the Book of Allah together, and we want to learn about life together, and we want to break bread together. That's how we get to see what's young people, what moves them. Okay, you don't know what moves somebody until you talk to them. I'll leave you with this. John Maxwell writes leadership books, said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You got to spend time with people. Younger people, you got to spend time with your elders. They dedicate, they donate this money, they put in this work for you. Don't be selfish. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى والصلاة والسلام على نبينا وحبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was an amazing segue. Actually, I really appreciate that. Me and brother Malik have always had this connection. Alhamdulillah. Ever since I was younger, and he was mentoring all of us. We could just kind of he would just look at me and he'd be like, I'm just like, all right, I got what he said, alhamdulillah. So it's really awesome that he actually ended with that segue, because the majority of kind of just whatever insight, which is very little compared to these two, mashallah, that I can give is going to be the gist of what he actually just ended with, inshallah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his prophetic tradition, he says, "Innamal a'malu binniyat." This is a very elementary hadith, right? That every single action is in accordance and is rewarded by its intention. And when you look at books of hadith, you see this narration almost all the time. It begins a lot of books of hadith. Why? Because intention is actually everything. Intention is every single thing that we do. Before we even do it, before we even know it, there's an intention along with that action. So our intention today, inshallah, is to try to understand understand the gap between the generations that we have in this mosque. And kind of like a precursor that I honestly want to give, like a disclaimer beforehand, is the fact that we're even sitting here and discussing this issue is a blessing. It honestly is a blessing. You know, like, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's kind of given me this ability to be able to travel recently, where I'm visiting random communities in the country, and, you know, I kind of go to these smaller communities, which I feel like I learn a lot more from than going to, like, Boston's and Chicago's and New York's. I go to smaller places. Like, I just went to Little Rock just 3 weeks ago. And what's incredible there is what they say about Memphis. They say, we see all the stuff that y'all are doing. It's amazing. It's amazing. We're ready to drop anything that you want, and like we want to have some of your programming here. And I'm not saying this to kind of like talk about, you know, mashallah, how good we are. It's just a source of appreciation. Because one thing I've learned over the past 2.5 years, honestly, serving in the community full time, is that the grass is always greener on the other side. The grass is always greener on the other side. Whenever we look from the inside out, we say, oh my goodness, it's so much nicer over there. Look at the numbers that they draw in. Look at the funds that they draw in. Look at the buildings that they have. But very few times do we honestly ever sit back and we say, alhamdulillah, praise to God that we have something really special going on here, right? That's step one. That's step one in this conversation. And so to understand this entire kind of topic is understanding the foundational issue, and that's the issue of the fact that it's difficult for people to understand each other. It's very difficult for folks to do that. For young people to understand their elders. For elders to understand their youngers. It's a very difficult task, actually. And, you know, it goes that younger people, and Brother Malik, he mentioned this, that young people have this hard time kind of appreciating and understanding that our elders have honestly literally laid the bricks for this community. They've literally, physically laid the bricks for this community. I mean, for God's sakes, I remember literally back when I was like 5, 6 years old, 6 years old when I first moved to Memphis, and we used to go to Masjid al-Salam, right? And Masjid al-Salam was this tiny little masjid in Memphis, the oldest masjid in Memphis. And we literally saw it being expanded a little bit, and then a little bit, and then a little bit. That's where we all started though, right? And I remember, you know, one of the setbacks of being a young person, I can speak on the young folks' behalf because I'm only 25. So one of the setbacks of young people is that at this age, you really don't have that ability to continuously reflect. You see things once in a while, but it's very difficult for us to sit for an extended period of time and just say, man, I appreciate that. You know, it's really interesting. I had a young person come up to me, and this is a common thing with young folks. And this is the reason I actually texted a group of young people before I came here, like a group of young volunteers. And I said, y'all need to be here for this session. Why? Because it's so relevant to you guys. I had a young person just a year ago come to me. And they say to me, you know, I wish the elders just took us more seriously. This is a very common narrative, by the way. This is a common, Brother Malik heard of it, Imam Anwar's probably heard of it, Majid Rahman. A common narrative of young people is that I wish my elders took me more seriously. And I asked that young person, as a teenager, and I asked that teen one fundamental question. I said, did you actually ever go up to one of your elders in the community or in any organization and actually tell them to their face, I appreciate all the work that you're doing? That I sincerely, I'm telling you right now, I appreciate what you're doing. All the sacrifices you made at work, your family, whatever it is, you did it and you laid that foundation for us. Because you know the flip side of the story is that elders complain that we don't trust the young people. And if you kind of look at these two things side by side, it's kind of circular reasoning. I don't trust the young people. Okay, so I don't give them any roles. And the young people say, I wish the elders give us roles. I wish they took us more seriously. Why don't you appreciate them? Because they don't give us roles. Like it's continuous. It continues on and on and on. Okay? I want to just tell just a couple of stories from the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam will inshallah make us kind of understand this concept a little bit better on how he dealt with things. Because at the end of the day, we look back at the prophetic tradition to see any sort of perfection of how things were done. Like this man just got stuff done, right? He connected people. He connected people's hearts. There was a beautiful narration actually before, and this is for the young people specifically actually, is how much the Prophet ﷺ actually valued the opinions of young folks. Because, you know, everyone knows about the Battle of Badr, right? Battle of Badr, everyone knows about it. You went to Sunday school, inshallah. You have the precursor. It's a difficult one, right? So the Battle of Badr, was it wasn't a very well thought out battle. It happened almost spontaneously, right? Just making a long story short, basically they were going to raid the caravan of Abu Sufyan, and they ended up being 313 Badri Sahaba in the middle of nowhere. And one of the companions, they said, Ya Rasulullah, can we go to this place that I know called Badr? They're known for these like beautiful giant wells. That's why Badr is called Badr, because the moon reflects off of the water from these wells. And they go to Badr, and what happened was only 313 could actually serve the Muslim Ummah at that time. So what happened when they went back to Medina was that when Uhud came around, the Prophet ﷺ, and by the way, this is something else that the Prophet was extremely good at. He was very good at seeking advice from other people. This is something he did on a daily basis. He would go out and ask people, how do you feel about this? What can we do that's better? This is honestly a really good lesson to take away from him. And he holds this council, and he says, there's an army of 10,000 coming towards Medina right now. What do we do? Just asking folks. And the two options were this. He said, we can either sit back, fortify, sanctify the city of Medina, and make it a safe haven, or we could go out and not even let them come towards Medina. What should we do? All the young folks in this room right now, what do you think the young people said? Let's go, right? And by the way, for good reason too, because they weren't able to participate in Badr. They were like, Ya Rasulullah, let us go out there. I need to go out there. I need to be able to serve this community. I wasn't able to do it last time. I need to go out there. And the Prophet, he took a step back and he looked at me and he said, man, I like that tenacity, You know that defensive player of the award, like the defensive player of the year award? Like, you like that guy. He's just going to go out and scrap. And the Prophet said, I like this. And he actually makes the decision that we're going to do this. And all the elders were like, we should stay back. And all the younger people were like, no, we should go out there. And the Prophet listens to the younger people. All the elders were like, Bisharam Bacha, what are you doing? Why are you telling the Prophet to do this? We're telling you something else. But he listened to the young folks. He listened to the young people at that time. It shows you how much he valued them. But on the flip opposite side, there was something that the Prophet ﷺ, he did in Medina also. What the Prophet ﷺ, he did in Medina, this is something amazingly profound, is that as he was kind of giving the message of Islam off to people in Medina, what he did was extremely amazing, is that a tradition of the Prophet was that he paired an older, wise Sahabi with a younger, charismatic one. This is something that he did. And one of the most famous duos, and you can note this down, one of the most famous duos in the Prophet ﷺ's life, in terms of this kind of amazing mutual relationship between one and the other, was by a man by the name, this is the older Sahabi by the name of Abdullah ibn Maktoum, and the younger person was a man by the name of Mus'ab ibn Umair. These two. Mus'ab ibn Umair was a younger, vibrant Sahabi, and Abdullah ibn Maktoum was an old, wise, blind man. An old, wise, blind man. Now, why on earth would the Prophet ﷺ, when it comes to da'wah, when it comes to engaging the community with Islam, why would he leave it up to not just one type of person? He took the best of both people. This is a principle that Islam actually kind of invokes in our lives. That Islam comes to kind of magnify people's strengths and mitigate and silently and wisely work on people's setbacks. And honestly, we have to ask ourselves this question. Do we follow that pattern, or do we do the opposite? Where we kind of shoo away people's talent. Like, no, it's okay. Just come to the masjid. Just come pray here. Or do we actually invite them to honestly display their talent? And by the way, not everyone's going to be good at one thing. Like Brother Malik said, not everyone's going to be Sheikh Saab. Not everyone's going to be Imam Saab. Not everyone's going to be Mufti Saab. Some people are going to come and just set up chairs. And they're going to be amazing at it. There are going to be some people that are going to come and cook food for your events, and they're going to be amazing at it. There are going to be some people who are taking photographs during the events, and that's all they're going to do, but they're going to be amazing at it. Something that we honestly do in our communities that's actually a huge problem is we burn people out by telling them to do things that they're not good at doing. Seriously. And it might sound mean, but it's very true. Like personally, by the way, everyone knows Samir Mansour, right? MashaAllah, newly elected board member. All right? Samir actually is very good at organizing things. Very good at it, mashallah. He's really good at sitting behind and just kind of like putting things together and making sure everything goes smoothly, I'm not that guy. Ask my wife. I'm terrible at organization. It takes me a while to put things together. So the reason why I'm bringing the story with Samir up is because Samir, I acknowledge that he's very good at that. But at the same time, Samir also says Safi is better at certain things than I am. So he leaves those things to me. It's a mutual relationship. And by the way, this relationship between Abdullah ibn Maktoum and Mus'ab ibn Umair, this led to over hundreds of Muslims accepting Islam in Medina. And during their time, actually, the likes of Sa'd ibn Mu'adh and Sa'd ibn Ubadah, who were the leaders of the Aus and Khazraj tribes in Medina, they accepted Islam under their da'wah. Which tells you what? It works. Is that it works. So my solution, in conclusion, honestly, is very simple. And this is the only thing, and I know Imam Anwar has way more, inshallah, to give than this. My solution, honestly, is at the end of the day, community work goes far beyond just community work. You know, my teacher, Shaykh Abdul Nasser, he told us one time, and I held this very, very dearly, that this work, quote unquote work, in the community, it's more along the lines of guiding souls than getting numbers in. You're in charge of guiding people's souls. That's what you're supposed to do. And you know, one of the things, and I'll end with this inshallah, is one of the things that I personally, as a young person, I see that it bugs me a little bit, is when I see people doing community work, and the folks that they do community work with, the only time they'll see them is during that event. And after the event is over, you're like, goodbye, I don't want to see you for another week, I'm done. It basically becomes like a 9-to-5 job. We treat it like work. It's no different. The narrative we have to change is that. Like Brother Malik, he mentioned, when you're doing work in the community or you're bridging the gap between elders and youngsters, the first thing we do is genuinely build a relationship and care for one another. You know, it's really interesting, is that when MIC first brought me on as a youth director, I made my own private contract, okay? And everyone's like, what? How dare he? No, this is for me, this is for myself. This is like a set of standards and morals that I kept for myself. And one of the things, wallahi, I kept it in my phone right now. Till this day, I wrote it down in September 2016. I literally wrote down, after each event, spend time with folks. After every event, spend time talking with people in the community. I wrote that down for myself as a reminder. That your job is not just to do event after event, program after program. It's actually to invest your heart with the heart of the community. That you become one. They know the name of your son. They know the name of your daughter. They know the name of your spouse. They know how you're doing. They know how your parents are doing because they ask you constantly. That is the job. That's how to kind of bridge that gap. Get the conversation rolling. Why would people care unless they actually know that you care about them? So inshallah, that's the only thing I have to say. And Imam Anwar, inshallah, will take it from here, and he'll give us more insight on everything, inshallah.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope that everyone is doing well, inshallah ta'ala, tonight. It's always an honor and a privilege to come here to MIC. And I want to thank Safi and everybody for inviting us out, inshallah ta'ala. And I want to congratulate your new board members. I know I see Samir over there, newly minted board member, and the other ones, yani Mubarak, inshallah ta'ala. We ask Allah that He makes you a good servants of Islam and the community first and foremost, inshallah ta'ala, and that He benefits through you, the Muslims, and that He makes it a cause for the forgiveness of your sins and the entrance into Jannah, inshallah ta'ala. The forgiveness of sins, of course, because it's a test. It can be difficult, it can be stressful, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to assist you in all of it. Wallahi, I know there's another board member from Masjid al-Salam and he's nodding his head. He's like, yes, it's a huge test. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy on you all, inshallah. With that in mind, using the idea of a test, is for us to understand that every relationship that we have is actually a test. And this takes us to pause for a moment and to actually zoom out and see the big picture. This is the picture that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually created, meaning this is actually by design. This is not a problem. So a lot of times when we think of problems, we think that there's like a problem in Allah's creation. And by mere fact that it is Allah's creation, that it's actually by design. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He first announced to the angels that He's going to create a human being, what did He say? وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. And when your Lord said to the angels, I will create a khalifa on earth. A khalifa means a generational creature that will exist one after another. Meaning there will always be multiple generations. This is unique to, obviously, human beings and other creatures. The angels don't have that. The angels don't procreate. They don't have generations. Once He creates the angel's there until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees otherwise. But for us as human beings, so by mere fact of our creation is that Allah put this in there. And then He mentions in many verses in the Quran that He made us fitna to one another. Atasbirun. He asks this question after He mentions this. He says, are you going to have patience? And this is now the question to us. Are we going to have patience in whatever relationship it is? Regardless of whether it's a spousal relationship, it's a sibling relationship, parent, father, parent, grandparent, etc. Are you going to have patience? So this is question number one that we have to ask ourselves. Are we going to have patience? Understanding that it's a test, all we have to do now is just pass the test. Utilize it for ourselves. This is actually not a problem. This is by design. Right? This is number one. Number two, it actually is an advantage for us. How is it an advantage for us? Human beings and whales and elephants, and I don't think there's any other animal, share what in common? Just these three animals. No. Naam? Not the ability to reason. Because reason should be, I guess, reserved for human beings. Yes? No. I mean, all animals communicate, right? Family connection, close. What exactly in family connection? Anybody know? The sisters? Anyone? They're the only species on earth that have grandparents active in the lives of the babies. All other animals, by the time there's grandparents, they die away. Because of their lifespans, they don't live to actually see the grandchildren. But in whales, a lot of times the children are actually raised by their grandparents. And in elephants, this is also the case. You have the matriarchal tribes of elephants, and you have the main female is actually a grandmother. And this gives them an advantage over all other animals. This is now we're talking about the animal kingdom. Why? Because that wisdom that they have, the experience that they have, the knowledge that they have can be carried on for generations. And so for us as human beings, obviously, learning from this simple example, this should give us an advantage in our own communities. And there are multiple studies that have shown this, that when children are exposed to their grandparents, they live better productive lives, they have a higher emotional intelligence than other children. What is emotional intelligence? What do we mean when we say emotional intelligence? Empathy, very good. Empathy is where I can actually relate to the emotional experience of the other person. It's not sympathy. Sympathy is where I feel bad for the person. I'm like, oh man, look at this guy. Miskeen, haram. Empathy is where oh man, it would be horrible to be in that person's shoes. I can relate to that. The other day, this very same thing happened to me. Right? Mu'adh, you work in Apple, right? Oh God. One of the training, when I worked in Apple too, I worked in Apple, and we had a whole week of training just on empathy. And at the beginning, I was like, what the heck is this? Why are they teaching us empathy? And they hired some of the new hires that they hired. Many of them were elderly. And there was a lady, she's a grandmother, right? Her name is Mary. And she was part of our team. And she was 60-something years old. And when they brought her on, she's like, I just applied on a whim. I didn't imagine that I would be working for Apple doing support for customers. Because she says that myself, when I go to need computer help, I don't even know how to use a computer. I call my grandchildren and they help me with the computer. But now I'm hired on to do this job. Why would Apple hire somebody like Mary? It's because Mary showed a lot of empathy in her interview, and she tested high on that quality. Empathy is where she can relate to the customer. Apple wants a good experience for the customers when they come in and they say, hey, my iPhone, I dropped it and it shattered. Can you guys help me? First thing that they're trying to do is, That would be really horrible if that happened to me. You know, I can totally relate. I did that the other day. They express empathy like, I know what you're feeling. I know what you're going through. Other places are like, okay, it's going to cost you $150. Straight up. They're not gonna connect with you emotionally. They're not gonna express like, I understand where you're coming from. The benefit, so going back, empathy is actually one of the solutions. We kind of jumped the gun here. One of the solutions to this issue, to passing the test, is empathy, meaning that I can empathize with the older generation. So the older generation in the community wants to do something, and us as a youth, we're like, oh, why do these elders want to do this? Oh, this is so bad. That's actually a bad reaction. Yani that's maybe a knee-jerk reaction. But our first solution to the problem is, okay, let me see if I can empathize with what they're doing. Let me put myself in their shoes. Let me see it from their perspective. And you can do this with not only elders in the community, but the old elders in your family. Your parents, where are they coming from? Your grandparents, where are they coming from? They're coming from some place. People are not inherently evil. Sometimes when we deal with our parents or our grandma, like, man, you're just mean to me. You just want evil things. You just, no. We should never, as Muslims, by the way, question the intentions of anyone. Because we don't know their intentions. If we should question anyone's intentions, we should question our own and continuously review them. But when it comes to other people, you should always, I'm telling you, wallahi, once you do this, you'll put your mind to ease and your heart to ease in so many issues. Never question the intentions of other people. Always assume that they mean well. And you'll find that a lot of times they do. And most of the time, I would argue, 99% of the time, they actually do mean well in their own way. Even the most evil people that we can imagine, in their mind, they're actually doing good. And that's why we should assume that their intentions are always good. Tayyib. Let me look at where they're coming from. Put myself in their shoes. Can I relate to their experience? What did my parents, when they came to this country, have to go through? What did they leave behind? What did they sacrifice? What did they build? If I were in their shoes, would I have done the same thing? I probably wouldn't have done a quarter of what they did. Honest to God, if we think about what they had to do for us to be able to sit here. And then it helps us, okay, understand that yes, they want to protect the resources, like the brothers said. They want to protect the community, make sure that the future is actually taken care of. So now I understand where they're coming from. And of course, for the elders, we have to empathize with the youth. From the youth's perspective, they don't have the experience that we have. So maybe we can share some of that experience. Share some of the reasoning. Trust that they are able to understand where we're coming from. Share that experience. And then empathize with them. Where are they coming from? Where are the youth coming from? What's in his mind or her mind? So it takes patience on both sides to see this empathy. Another thing, inshallah ta'ala, is communication. And they said this already. And I want to re-emphasize this. It's not only do they not trust me, like the youth say, like, oh, these people don't trust me. Have you ever gone up to them and actually thanked them? I would ask, have you ever gone up to them and actually had a conversation? Said anything beyond Assalamu alaikum? Anything. You know what I mean? How you doing? How's your health? Trust me. Once you start talking to an elderly person, they won't stop. It's a blessing. You can learn so much. Wallah, it truly is a blessing when we have our elders. And don't think like, oh, I heard the same story already like 50 times. No, it's not a problem. Hear it again 51 times. It's not going to hurt. Maybe there's something that you're not catching. There's a wisdom why maybe he's sharing it for the 51st time. You've heard this joke again and again. You've heard the story again and again. But it resonates for a certain reason. And I always say those open lines of communication, of dialogue are important. And we should entrust as elders the younger people. Now, I'm not saying this as me, myself, an elder. I hope that I'm kind of in the middle. I can be an arbiter. But we try to do this. We try to relate to people. We try to talk to people, empathize, understand, connect. You know, I'm blessed, alhamdulillah, that I have my grandparents in town. So this is my grandfather. If anybody hasn't yet met him, he just came 6 days ago from Gaza through Egypt. He stayed in Egypt just for a little bit to get his visa and stuff like this. Him and my grandmother is sitting somewhere with the sisters as well. Did she come back or is she not? Oh, she is not here. No, never mind. My grandmother's not here. But she was earlier at Masjid Rahman. My mother is here, yes. Of course, my grandfather, he has been leading the salah. You name the masjid in Gaza Strip, he's probably led the salah at some point there and given a lecture there as well. And he's been active longer than I've been alive, probably longer than even my father's been alive. My father's right there as well. And I'm blessed. I'm saying this personally. Of course, we want to thank him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him for everything that he's done. But also that it's people like this that we need to value and appreciate and take in their experience and then utilize it as youth with the energy and the charisma and all of these things that we have. Insha'Allah ta'ala. I had other points, but I'm also a conversationalist like Brother Malik, and I would like to hear from the community, inshallah ta'ala, more on this topic. And inshallah ta'ala, afterwards, if anybody wants to come up and say salam to my grandfather, or to my father as well, my uncle. Oh, he left, never mind. Oh, he's over there. You're more than welcome to do so, inshallah ta'ala. Like I said, it's a blessing. We excel when we utilize everybody's specific talent, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullah khairan, subhanakallah, hamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, we'll inshallah open up the floors for questions. Mu'adh, go ahead.
You mentioned earlier that, that it's not your right to question somebody's intention.
Naam.
Right. However, how do you combat that in terms of, combat's probably not the right word, but in terms of
Resist the temptation to question someone's intentions?
not really, but when you know somebody's being very irrational in your
Sure.
right? So, for example, if I don't know, like your parents want you to pick a certain school or
Sah.
another one, but
Yeah.
you know that that's not right for you.
Uh-huh.
Right?
How do you do that in a good way? So,
Do it in a respectful way.
good. Anybody want to answer that? I mean, I would take a shot at it. I would say number one, as parents, there are different styles to parenting, right? And okay, so the question is, let's say there's a young person, he knows that he wants to go to X college because it would be good for him for 1, 2, and 3. And his parents say, no, we want you to go over here. You know what I mean? Because of whatever, their name or anything like this. How do we express to our parents that what we intend on doing is actually what we think is best for us without getting into like a conflict here? Right? This is a question that I think comes up and needs to be resolved. First off, we should ask a very fundamental question. Is it okay to disobey one's parents? Right? So this is question number one. And for some people, it's not an easy necessarily question. But I would say that if the parent is telling you to do something haram or sinful or that's harmful for you, you have 100% right to disobey them. Does that mean that you are disrespectful or unkind? No. Because even in the same verse, he says, وَإِن جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. But then it also says, وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. It says, if they force you to commit shirk, the worst sin, don't obey them. But you should still be friends with them in kindness. Do you see what it says? Even though they're pushing you to do the worst sin in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's still saying, be nice to them. They're telling you to do the worst thing. So, in our discussions, the responsibility of the youth is always be respectful. Even if you intend on disobeying. For whatever reason that you have, you should always maintain respect and kindness with your parents. Now, for the parents, sometimes we tend to parent the same style for our kids when they're 7, the same way when they're 17, the same way when they're 27. And it never evolves. Right? The evolution of the relationship between parent and child doesn't change. You still see the same kid as a kid. And you don't trust that maybe they have some insight. And a lot of times we don't hear them out. We don't see like, okay, what's your reasoning behind going to this college? Let's have an honest conversation. And sometimes it opens up this vulnerability. And it's very difficult sometimes for parents to be vulnerable with their children. Right? To communicate and to understand and to empathize and to communicate. And this is the discussion that many parents need to have. Ali ibn Abi Talib's, I think, recommendation is perfect. And we were taught this a long time ago. And it's based on the hadith of salah and commanding your children. So it says to command your children at what age to pray? 7. That means up until 7, what are they doing? You're just playing with them. You're establishing a connection that's perhaps unbreakable. And you shouldn't be tough on your kids at that age. You shouldn't be too stern. You shouldn't be, you know what I mean, too... It should be mula'aba. And this is what Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says, لَعِبْهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ. He said you should play with them and just establish a nice relationship, a bond, a parental bond that they can come to you with anything. And they're expressing also emotion, and this emotional intelligence is during this time. Studies have shown that it even starts when they are babies, emotional intelligence. And by the way, tracking emotional intelligence, you have a higher success rate in life, both in your career and in your relationships, the people who have high EQ, emotional intelligence, not IQ. Because a person can have a high IQ and he can be a jerk. And nobody wants to work with him. And nobody wants to be his friend. And nobody wants to be married with him. Guess what? He's going to be a failure. But a person with a high EQ, people like him. He understands others where they're coming from. He's able to effectively communicate because he understands the emotions. He'll be a much more successful person in both his career and in his relationships life. Okay? EQ is very important, and this is developed from when you're a child. Now, if you're older and you're like, man, my EQ is really low, no, you can develop it, inshallah ta'ala. There's no problem. It just takes for you to try to relate to others, understand where they're coming from, be in tune with your own emotions, knowing what you're feeling. Why do I feel this way? Right? What can I do to manage my emotions? Because we can't really control them sometimes, but we can try to manage them. And so on and so forth. And so as parents, it takes us to kind of open up. It's very difficult for a parent to admit that they're wrong. Think about it. When was the last time a parent admitted to their kid that I'm wrong? I'm sorry. You come to the kid and you're like, you know what I mean? Baba, the other day when this happened, wallah, I'm sorry. It's hard. Think about that. That it's a vulnerability that the parent has to express to the kid is difficult. But we have to do, I'm telling you, as parents, guess what the kid does? You know the kid's reaction? Wow, it's okay as a person to admit that I'm wrong. It's okay to ask others for forgiveness. And now that kid will grow up, and guess what? He'll be okay with admitting that he's wrong. Guess what we have now? We have kids, they will never admit that they're wrong. I'm always right. It's always my way. Why? Because they probably never saw it in their own upbringing. Their parents were always right too. And they could never really open up to them and try to express, certain things with them. So I would say, try to apply, I'm going on a spiel here, I'm sorry. But Ali ibn Abi Talib, play with them for 7. Then he says, teach them for the next 7. So from 7 to 14, what are you doing now? You're teaching them salah. You're teaching them about their deen. You're teaching them belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're teaching them good morals. Now we're teaching them in school as well. This is usually the age that they start first grade. Now we're actually teaching them substance. So that by the time they hit 14, which is roughly the age of puberty, they have all the knowledge now to apply it. And then he says, وَصَاحِبْهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ. Now be their friend for the next 7. And many parents have a hard transition into this, being a friend. Being there for when they need you. Now, you don't need to teach them as much because the teaching should have been done. Now is the time that, okay, guess what? I'm going to be, you know what I mean? We're going to have more of a relationship. We're going to have conversations now. Not lectures, conversations. Now we're going to be expressing common things. You know what I mean? When I was your age, this is what I went through too. You're going through similar things. Man, that's tough. You're relating to them. You're making sure that they understand that you also, at one point, as a parent, were also a teenager. And you went through similar experiences. Right? And unfortunately, parents still, when the kids are 20 years old, they still think that they're 10. And they have a hard time transitioning. So,
Bismillah. I'll just give you a personal story, like 2 scenarios. My oldest child was the guinea pig in the house because she was the oldest child. But a couple of years ago, I really wanted her to go to seminary because she's interested in Deen and studying Deen. But she told me she didn't want to go at that time. That was tough. Like, real, being honest, it was tough, right? I had to hearken back to a conversation I had with her 2 years ago, 2 years prior to that conversation. Microphone? Oh, microphone? Alhamdulillah. All right, so I had to hearken back to a conversation I had 2 years ago, 2 years prior to her saying she didn't want to go. And she sat me down and her mom, and she said, look, she just came from a Deen intensive. She said, look, trust me, Like, you've raised me well. Y'all have done a good job. I need y'all to trust me. Right? Alhamdulillah, man, we're raising some good kids. Alhamdulillah, like I've taught in public and private schools. Alhamdulillah, we got some good kids. We don't celebrate our kids enough. So I had to remember what she said. And it was rough. I mean, it was rough. I was tripping in the house, right? Like, it was me, right? I had an attitude, you know what I'm saying? Like this, that, and the other. My wife was like, come on, man, get over yourself, right? Like, it's not about you. And this is why you need to marry good people. Because some of this problem with parents and kids, there's always one parent, and it's normally the mom, because mothers are normally really, they have their ear to the ground. You need one parent to kind of rein the other one in sometimes. Either they're being too soft. Sometimes as parents, we can be too soft. We don't have any expectations for them. Or we can be too hard. So, mothers and fathers, we need both. We need a balance of both. So that's just a story of my own experience. I like to be fully honest with people because I think, theory is theory.
I think one thing I want to add really quickly, inshallah, just like a minute, just to kind of just really summarize both of them. I had one experience, and I think I completely agree with Brother Malik where he said, I don't think we give our young folks enough credit or enough kind of like, just a little bit of praise here and there privately is a good thing, actually. I remember we actually held in MIC, we held a summer 10-day intensive for young people, so an intensive for teens. And I remember a parent came up to me the entire week, and they were telling me how worried they are about their kids. And these are the kids that are sitting in the intensive, by the way. And they're not just sitting there like wanting to leave, they were sitting there engaging with me. After the sessions were over, by the way, this intensive lasted 10 days, 4.5 hours a day. That's heavy work for a teenager. Islamically, that's heavy work right there. And this parent came up to me, kept on talking to me about how she's so worried about her kids and I don't know where my kids are headed. And I kind of like just stopped for a second and I told her, I said, like, Auntie, I'm be very honest with you right now. Your daughter, your son, they're sitting in a youth intensive at age 15, learning about their deen and faith comprehensively for 10 days straight. How many of us can say when we were 15 we did that? So, and this I'm gonna quote Sheikh Hamza, by the way. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and he's like I make this joke about Sheikh Hamza all the time. Sheikh Hamza's translations needs translations. Yeah. Like Sheikh Hamza's English is like otherworldly. Sheikh Hamza, he actually said that when you see a person struggling with sin, you don't try to repel it all at one time. You peel it back a layer at a time, one by one. That's why Islamically, when the ruling for alcohol, for khamr became haram, it didn't come all at one time. It didn't come right when Islam was established. It came after a while. Because if it came right then and there, it would have been difficult for people. When we see somebody struggling with something, especially young folks, teenagers, and we see problems, our immediate reaction is we have to fix it right now. We have to fix it immediately. I was having this discussion with Sheikh Yasser last night. And we both talked about it. And we said, our immediate reaction is, I have to fix this child. Wallahi, you don't understand how many people come to me and say, Safi, fix my son. I'm like, he's not a science project. Like,
he's not an iPhone.
He's not an iPhone that I can send to Mu'adh. Right? Like, it needs to be reeled back one step at a time. That's why on my Friday nights and Sunday nights when we host stuff for teens and college and young professionals, some people come to me and they say, one of the most common things they say, I'm really not comfortable participating in a reflection circle because I'm not there yet spiritually. I don't think I should come to a masjid. And I tell them, I'm like, you're the first person that should come. You are more than welcome here. You belong here just as much as I do. I'd rather you be here than me. So we need to start realizing that when something goes wrong or we see a setback, we need to kind of ease into it one step at a time. When we overwhelm people with our form of a solution, sometimes it does more harm than the initial mistake itself. That's a really serious thing right there. So, inshallah, we have another question here. Another question by Usman, and then I'll actually reiterate a question that I got on my phone, which I think is really, really important. So, go ahead, Usman.
I don't have a question. Just
yes.
Going back to Mu'adh's question, how do you question somebody's intention without actually questioning them, right? if it's a decision by a parent, if it's a friend or whatever who's saying something and you are doubtful of their intention, maybe just asking the question, can you help me understand where you're coming from?
Yeah.
I don't know where you're coming from. It's hard for me to accept what you're saying. Can you just be honest and tell me where you're coming from
Yeah.
so I can understand what you're saying? That's all.
That makes sense. Perfect sense. Yeah. Having a dialogue with people, I've never been disappointed with that from experience. Usually, like people who don't want to dialogue with you, that's when you have to be careful. So, like one time there was a brother. I gave a khutbah. This is 2006. I was barely starting out. They put me in the rotation. Once a month at the masjid, I'm giving the khutbah, and my grandparents were living with me at the time, so I had some mentorship. And a brother emailed me. He's like, "Brother, you need to repent to Allah. You know what I mean? The thing that you're a part of is this and this and this." It's just a huge email. I didn't understand half of what he said, to be honest. I didn't know. So, and I consulted some people and they're like, just talk to him. Don't respond on the email. So I did. I'm like, Jazakallah khair for your advice. Let's get together for some tea or coffee or whatever at your house, my house, wherever you would like. He's like, no, I don't want to. Okay, khalas. A few months later, emails me again. Long email. You have to repent. What you're saying is this, this, this. And I'm like, I didn't say any of this stuff. You weren't even at the khutbah, man. He wasn't. It turned out later on, and I found out he wasn't even there. He was hearing of something. I don't know. So I emailed him back, and I'm like, brother, come over to my house. Let's have some coffee, and we'll discuss it. And what did he respond? No, I'm good. I don't want to. I'm okay. You know what I mean? And he didn't want to. So I emailed him back. I'm like, when you're ready to have a conversation, let me know, inshallah ta'ala. But please, refrain from making any assumptions or anything like that, in the future. Of course, that still didn't stop him. But I later found out that he, in the process, alienated most of his friends that were trying to communicate. So I went to his friends, and eventually he ended up leaving the whole community just because he lost everyone around him. Because, like I said, when you have a conversation, it opens you up, and some people are afraid of opening up. Right? Being vulnerable may be because they know that their intentions aren't where they should. But a person whose intentions are in check has no problem being vulnerable, I would argue. Because, you know what I mean, my intentions, I hope, are pure. So when I open up, you'll see my pure intentions. So I have no problem with that.
It's a really important question. I think it needs to be addressed, actually. So someone texted me this right now. So I'll reiterate the question out loud for everyone to hear. A person asked, so for kids that grew up in the United States, but parents who moved to the United States, so first generation immigrant parents, how do we get the parents to understand that a certain part of the kid's life is inherently going to be American and not completely like their traditions back home? How do these kids convince their parents to allow American traditions to enter their homes without resistance? Brother Malik.
What kind of American traditions?
Exactly. So
I was gonna say they're negative ones. Yeah.
So how do these kids, sons or daughters, can help their parents understand or allow American traditions to enter the homes without resistance?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this is where we're not using our own resources. We're just not. It's really, Allah gives you resources. You should use them. The most underutilized group to me in the Muslim community are two: women and converts. You want to know people who can tell you about America? Omar radiallahu anhu was worried about Ibn Omar, and he said because he never tasted dunya. Converts have tasted dunya. We just, for us to struggle, and I often hear from Muslim parents, for you to struggle, who should I do? You got a boatload of converts who want meaning. You want to contribute. People want to contribute to the community. Often, reason why we're losing about 70% of people who convert to Islam, there's no meaning. They can't contribute anything. Their wallet isn't big enough to give. They haven't learned enough to speak on the minbar. And like I said earlier, we generally only give two people shine in the community, or we give two people enough respect that keeps them their dignity are people who can give money and people who can teach. You have converts who can teach your child everything they don't want to know about America, and they can teach you what to keep them away from. If we're not utilizing the gifts that Allah has given us, we can't really blame America. It's not the society. To me, I'm not a blamer of American society. Either you create a new culture with some of that talent we're not using, or, to be honest, America just isn't the place for everybody. It's just not. I've wondered that myself. It's just not the place for everybody. It's also a place where you can create a healthy and moral culture that I've seen it done in America. People who create culture that their kids can relate to. Look, we've created Islamic schools. There's a reason why Islamic schools were created. There's a reason why people homeschool. Like, we have a diverse group of people, even in this room. We can help each other if we have skin in the game. If I see your child as important as my own child. I know that's difficult. But who do we think our kids are going to grow up with in the next 10, 15 years? Who are they going to marry? So, in short, use converts. They can tell you everything you need to know about America, what to stay away from, what to go towards. And to me, that's the answer. You have to utilize what Allah has given you.
Yeah. No, I think that's a huge resource that is definitely underutilized. I would encourage the person who asked the question, the youth, to initiate conversations with their parents. Conversations in which they're not attacking, they're not questioning their intentions, right? They genuinely want to explain to the parent what it is of American culture that they would like. Because for them, they're also American. I mean, they were born and raised here. And so whatever it is, that element of the culture, and then that way we have a dialogue. We're coming together over something. It's not just like, oh, I don't want it. Okay, ask the parent, can I understand? Can you explain to me, what is it? Do you know what it is that I actually want? You'd be surprised. Sometimes they'd be like, I don't know what it is. I think everything American is evil. Okay, then, you know what I mean? Now we can... You know what I mean? Yeah. Or they say, no, I heard that these people did the same thing and this is what happened to them. Okay, now, you know what I mean? Okay, maybe you understand, maybe you misunderstood, etc. Find out. You'd be surprised when you ask the people where they're coming from what they say. Sometimes we assume, and our assumptions are always wrong. And this is why in Islam, we shouldn't assume. Yeah. Oh, you want to? Yeah. Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah. Uh-huh. Abu Safi, yes. Oh, yeah.
Because I believe that the parents that you're talking about
Yeah.
were our parents.
Uh-huh.
Okay? I'm 58 now, and I believe
MashaAllah.
my father
May Allah give you another 58.
was not conversation.
No.
I believe that. But in today's world in America,
Yeah.
us parents are not that close. Okay? We feel
Yeah.
that we are open to conversation.
I agree with you.
And what we have noticed, what I would like to project to you is, what I've noticed that the children are not listening.
Yeah, they make assumptions.
They start the conversation, they go to a certain length, and then they want to walk away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Without, conversation, discussion is intelligent
Naam.
communication.
Mm-hmm.
You sit down at the table and you converse.
Mm-hmm.
You may have differences in opinion, but you can continue a conversation and you can arrive at a point, okay, which will be
Mm-hmm.
helpful to both
Mm-hmm.
sides.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm maybe sounding like I'm making my children
No.
I'm like, I should get on the table.
Do you need to have a conversation with Safi?
Listen, I have a younger sister, okay? It's not always about me.
What I've noticed is that, they're all children over here, and I've taught in schools as well. I've
Yeah.
managed Sunday school. There is a tendency of young people to converse with the elder people,
Uh-huh.
and the argument reaches a certain level. They want to walk away,
Yes.
and they want to say, "Oh, well, you don't understand."
Right. To actually emphasize that point, I was going to say, like, So they interviewed a bunch of high school teachers in America. This is last year. And they asked them, what is the biggest problem that you see with your students? Can anybody guess? The biggest thing that high school students are lacking now. And as a high school teacher, I know this. I've seen it. Naam? Emotional skills? Close. Social skills, that's exactly it. They said conversational skills are down hugely compared to where they were maybe 15, 20 years ago. Anybody know why? This right here. We're not talking face to face anymore. We're hiding behind a screen. And our children have lost the ability to empathize, to see emotions, to read other people's emotions. They can't do that anymore. They fail to also be internal with their own emotions, and they don't know, why do I feel this way? What's going on? Why is this conversation awkward? Oh, I want to avoid every awkward conversation. And so even if they know that the conversation is going to be awkward with their parents, they're going to try to avoid it as much as possible, but then they're going to come to Safi, and they're going to complain, my parents don't understand me. My parents don't want to do this. Well, you haven't talked to them, dude. You know what I mean? And this is a huge problem. And I agree. I think a lot of our parents are actually much more open-minded than we give them credit for. And I apologize if I did stereotype. My own parents, I'll tell you, are some of the most open-minded people I've ever met. And alhamdulillah, I'm grateful for this. Now with my grandparents, I can't really, no, I'm just kidding. Because I did for a while when I was in college live with only my grandparents. So my grandparents were actually my second parents. If that makes sense. My parents had to move overseas, and then my grandparents came, and they had nowhere to stay except with me, and I'm still in college, so they came and lived with me for a few years, and I would take them to the doctor, go to school, go to work, you know what I mean, do all these things. They would cook, which tended to be very beneficial, of course, because as a college student, I would have been stuck with ramen noodles every day, and instead I had, magluba and, all these nice meals. But then my friends also knew this, so they would call me and they're like, Anwar, where are you? And I'm like, I'm studying in the library. He's like, okay. And then he shows up at my house, knowing that I'm not there. Oh, is Anwar here? No, he's not. Come in, ta'al, come in. And he'd be, okay, sure. Of course, he knows that they're going to invite him. He knows that there's food always. And they would go and they would eat behind my back. So I got taken advantage of that way.
Fake friends.
But, yes.
Somebody just asked this question that would like to bring America into the house.
Yes. America's already in the house, but they don't realize it, yeah.
Malik Shaw is absolutely right. That's what will you bring in?
Yes. What is it? Are you bringing in bacon? A girlfriend? No, this is serious. Yeah, this is what are you bringing in? Wallahi, yeah, exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
I think parents are overworked. Due to this whole nuclear focus on a nuclear family thing, I mean, my father, I love everybody knows, my father's that's my guy. I mean, my father's amazing. My father wasn't very open-minded, and I needed him to be that way. I had an aunt who, there's nothing like aunts, right? There's nothing like aunts. We're parenting, this is not normal the way we're parenting. It's not normal for children to be with their parents so much. You need a team, like you need aunties and uncles and friends and community and Safi and Mads, and Samir, like you need a team. If you think you're gonna raise kids on your own in America in 2018, good luck.
It takes a village, yeah.
I mean, I'm talking to something, mothers are tired, they're exhausted. Kids are tired of looking at their parents. My own, I'll speak for myself. I'm sure my own kids get tired of looking at me sometimes. Because this isn't normal. The amount of time we're spending with each other is not normal. Husband and wives don't, my wife sometimes is like, look, man, I just need to go, or you need to go. Like, you need to get out of here, go do something else. Because, and I understand where she's coming from. Before, when I was younger, my ego's all over the place. What, you don't want to be around me? What you mean? Something wrong with you, woman? Like, you know what you got. Yeah, you need a team. Yeah, I think parents are overworked. They're the people who can blame because they're the people who are on the job. We need a team. I talk to parents all the time. People are tired. So make sure you got a team. Put one together. Reach out. Be vulnerable and say, look, I need some help. Don't just bring it all to this guy.
No, it's okay. Let him work.
Mr. Adashir, you have. We'll do a last question, inshallah. Then we'll break for Salatul Isha, inshallah. And we have some sisters. We have some sisters in the back as well. Sisters, do we have any questions, sisters?
Wow.
No, we definitely do have questions for sure. Are we just too shy to ask questions?
They're writing them down.
Yeah. Okay, inshallah. Mr. Adashir.
Yeah.
When I heard this topic of bridging the gap between the young and the old, it reminded me of the councilman, the new councilman in Cleveland, Bashir Jones, African American councilman, first Muslim councilman to be elected into office in the city of Cleveland ever. And he gave an amazing speech. You should look him up on YouTube, Bashir Jones, councilman election speech. And one of the things that he said a lot of amazing things and did some monumental things in that building that day. But one thing he said that really stuck out to me is he differentiated between the term elder and old people. He said, elders show the way, but old people just get in the way. And I wanted to add to that, because we don't have two different names for young people, we just young people. I wanted to add to that I think on the same, in the same token, young people, we can either be useful or just be useless. So if we're gonna complain about something, it's okay to express, grievances and, disagreements and issues, but come with something. Don't just come with a complaint, come with a solution. You want to say something to the elder, come to the table with some suggestions. People complain about the Eid. You know what I'm saying? Oh, we didn't do anything for Eid. Growing up, I never depended on the message. It's not me. It was a group of, I had people to look at. Never my idea, but there were people around me. They said, you know what? Nothing going on for Eid. All right, y'all, let's do something. Growing up, as my parents in the community that we were in, the community activities were not in the masjid. They said, okay, nothing's going on at the masjid. All right, we got our houses. This week I'm at your house. Next week we're at your house. Next week we're at your house. Then we're going to be at the park. We're going to rent that little building. And that was my life for a very long time. It was barely ever at the masjid. Not that it should be that way. But my point is that we don't need to wait on anybody if we want results.
Very good point.
He said something when you said older and elder. As a community, we really need to just differentiate youth from post-pubescent. I have a son who's 10. He's a youth. I have a daughter who's 19. She's not a youth. And she pointed this out to me earlier this week. She said at some point, young people just got to grow up. And I think we don't understand. In Allah's eyes, post-pubescent, you grown.
Yeah, you're an adult.
You're an adult. It's time to give back. And we as a community need to appreciate, to treat young people like once you hit that marker, we're going to respect you as an adult and have the expectations as an adult on you. I know in America there's this thing of kind of this extension of adolescence and childhood. We really can't afford that. No. As a community, we will not be around if our young people don't get in the game. The Amish understood that very clear, and they sued so their kids would only have to go up to 8th grade because their argument was if our kids don't grow up, we will not exist. They're the richest community in America. The Amish are the richest community in America. They understood their situation in regards to their young people. We really need our young people in those ideas, in that energy, in that creativity, in that courage. We need that. to reinvigorate our community. It's just like we need converts to reinvigorate our community. We need young people. We need young, fresh ideas and young energy and a young accountability. Young people will hold you accountable. We need that. So really, let's cut off the youth at some particular age. That's just a beef I have.
Jazakallah khair. So inshallah, we'll wrap up with, unless we have one more question. Yes, just.
Yeah.
Wa alaikum salam.
You know, I listened when you spoke of community, you spoke of, culture, and what strikes me is this, that we're all so far apart. Like we speak of community, but when you look at the diversity of cultures that's in this, in American society, that makes up American society, you will see that the various peoples of this American society, they'll create actual communities. Okay, we say we have a masjid here, we have a masjid there, we have a masjid, and people come to the masjids. They bring their youth to the masjids, but we're still very far apart. So it's difficult to form that. How would you say that? That common culture. Okay, you learn your deen, but still flowing in each of these other communities is a common culture. I mean, besides their religious views, there's a common culture, and there's a togetherness. But if you really, if we be frank here, there's not that serious togetherness amongst ourselves, nor amongst our youth. And we can deal with it on individual basis and say, well, I do this with my family, I do this with my youngsters. But until we adults get together and figure out how we're going to create an environment where we can say, yeah, well, we're not scattered, so to speak. Or if we're scattered, like say, there's pockets here and there, and everybody's on the same page, and everybody's working towards the same goal. Our youth are going to do what we see our youth doing. They're going to, as you say, they're going to become adults. They're going to reach that high school or college level, and they're gone. They're going to disseminate into general society and become a part of somebody else's culture. And a lot of times the culture they disseminate into is things that we say we don't want to bring that, how would you say that, American culture into our home. Well, it's there, it's in my house. Anytime you turn on the television, you got a bunch of strangers, telling your kids, how to live and how not to live, that culture is in your house. So there's a lot of things that we really need to sit down as adults and figure out in order to get our youth, to be supportive of where we're coming from.
I think, so in short, I know we got to make this a lot. There's two things.
Give him the microphone. Yeah.
One with,
So there's a very beautiful saying the Arabs have: pick your neighbor, then pick your house.
No. الجار قبل الدار. Yeah.
Pick your neighbor, then pick your house.
Yep.
We gotta, the Jewish community has a Jewish neighborhood. Every other community, Cooper Young is Cooper Young. It's beautiful, right? Huh? MIC has a lot of land. I didn't say he said that. No, I mean, for the next generation, we do have to at some point, yeah, I agree with you. Communities aren't communities if they're not physical. Communities aren't communities if they're not physical. If you don't know, we read hadiths about visiting the sick. That means people live close to each other, right? No, I agree. I mean, it may not be for this generation. Maybe that's a goal for the next generation. We got to give a narrative for the next generation to live up to, or everybody just gonna pick up and move here, there, all over the place because we haven't bought in with each other. There's no skin in the game. There's skin in the game if I live next to you, right? Yeah. There's skin in the game. Like what's affecting you is affecting me. So we have all these Arab descendants, all these Arabs in the room. There's a wisdom we can learn from that. Pick your neighbor, then pick your house. Don't pick your house and get a strange neighbor.
Jazakallah khair. So inshallah, it's 8:47. Inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for any of our mistakes and our shortcomings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this group that we have here today, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for any mistakes we made in conversations or any sort of shortcomings or indirect insults that we may have had on anybody, inshallah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us in the ranks in this life and in the hereafter. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik.